coming to the, hold on, what is today? The 25th, Thursday, this is the second meeting of September for the CCSE. My name is Jeremy Kaufman. I chair this fine organization. The main function for this organization is policy and legislation creation, but we also do B2B meetings like this. We have a bunch of subcommittees after this. We as 502 producers and processors need to be dealing with these elements of our growth. We also have the Washington Cannabis Commission update. We have John Davis here who's going to give you our executive director update. We have some announcements, and we'll have one presentation to close out the meeting. So without further ado, I will have Rick Hess up here. And ready to round of applause.
Hello, thank you very much for allowing me to come and talk with you a little bit about air. My name is Rick Hess. I'm a supervising inspector with the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency. I've been an inspector for about 23 years now. So, and I've actually had the opportunity to, visit 4 different facilities at this time. Like anything else, this was new, and we were trying to get, at least our agency was trying to get an understanding of what role we play and how the cannabis industry would fit into existing air rules. There's been no new rules with respect to air that's been implemented with respect to cannabis. So what I thought I would do is just maybe talk a little bit, just briefly about who the agency is, and then I'll probably talk a little bit about permitting issues, and then we can then spend some time on odor. So I think those are probably the things that you probably want to hear the most about. And clearly, I'll take any questions that you may have. So does that help? Okay. So who is the agency? Well, let me explain. In the state of Washington, years ago, the state legislation set it up so the state of Washington are like air basins. So we have central Puget Sound region. That's who we have jurisdiction over. Then you have areas like eastern Washington. They have a different set of air issues. So the problems that we face along the I-5 corridor are not the same as you experience in Okanagan County. So the legislature back then decided they would create different air agencies based on the issues with particular areas. It's not like water, where you have the same water regulations throughout the state. So anyway, so we have jurisdiction in 4 counties. That would be King, Pierce, Snohomish, and Kitsap counties. We do inspections. We do permitting. We'll talk about that. We do air monitoring. We have a responsibility. We have technicians out there that have air monitoring stations set up, and we're trying to determine whether we're in compliance with federal air quality standards. We also do education and outreach, and that's like one reason why I'm here. I want to again thank you very much for allowing me to show. So we do get our authority under the Clean Air Act. Again, we enforce state, our own local regulations and federal rules. But being a local agency, when we're enforcing federal rules, is that we're required to be as strict or more strict than the federal rule. So no one from EPA is going to be doing air inspections because we've been given that authority. It's like a contract. Same with the state of Washington. So, so who do we inspect? Who do we visit? Who do we care about? Well, there's a whole different types of, basically any source that's stationary. So the Department of Ecology will regulate vehicles. They got license plates, they're moving up and down the road, they're mobile. So we take on the stationary sources, such as, and I'll just list off a bunch, like gas stations, auto body shops, dry cleaners, aerospace facilities like Boeing, cement plants. We regulate asbestos, refineries, paint shops, metal platers, composting, dust, odors. We'll talk about that obviously. Outdoor burning, burn bans. We're the ones that call burn bans. We regulate wood stoves, asphalt plants. It kind of goes on, foundries. So it's just that kind of list of sources. So what I thought I would do at this point then is just maybe go over the permitting requirements. So if you are a grower or a processor, you will need a permit from our agency to be lawful. So retailers, however, are exempt. There's no permitting requirements for retailers. What will happen if you're a processor is we'll be very interested in the types of chemicals, And I'll just say that when it comes to processors, the rule does talk about, and there are, when you apply, depending on what quantities and what types of chemicals you're using, processors could fall out if you're really small. But you're not going to know that until such time you apply. But if you're growing, you need a permit. And so this falls actually under our existing regulation. It's called 603. And so just so you know, permits are issued to assure compliance with air rules for specific sources or specific types of equipment. Okay? And the way our air or our permitting rule is written is it's actually written kind of funny, where it actually lists what's exempt. So if you're not on that list, then by default you're in. You need a permit. And again, you can always apply, and based on the types of information that you submit when you submit your application, the agency could simply determine that no permits are required. You'll get a letter saying that. You'll get a statement, so you'll have that with you, provided nothing changes from that point forward. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. I'm going to talk a little bit about the permitting process too. It's what they call a BAC review, best available control technology. So anytime somebody comes in and applies for a permit, at that moment in time, there's a review done with respect to. We're going to be very interested in things like process flow, but actually we're going to be interested in the types of controls that's going to be installed or in play. Again, as the applicant, you tell what, and we'll talk about controls. You state what types of controls that you are going to be installing to minimize or eliminate, for example, in this situation, odors. So there'll be a review of that, and then what comes out of that are things like permit conditions. We'll talk a little bit about what that looks like as well. So, and again, the BAC review basically is just an engineering review where they look at all different types of control technology. It has to be like within the 80% of the best, it's at the 80% threshold or better. So because keep in mind, as time goes on, technology changes. And so once you have the thing about an air permit is once you get it, you got it for life. You got it forever. You get to rely on that permit. It's not like you got to get it renewed every year. But the challenge is if you ever modify, which means you do something that's going to increase emissions, then you have to apply for a permit modification. I know it sounds all technical and stuff, but for the most part, I think the good part about it is that you get a permit and you get to rely on that, and then you can focus your business model and your business plan around that. You don't have to worry about curveballs being thrown at you in the future. So that's the good part about it. One thing I'm going to say about your industry is it's actually pretty straight up and pretty simple, and you'll hear me talk about that. It's going to be something like carbon filtration. Very simple. So that's very good. But it is a requirement, and it is the law. And of course, there'll be other overlying requirements like odor control and things like that, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So it's not just the permit conditions that you need to comply with, but there's also overlying requirements as well, like complying with the odor standard. We're going to go over what that's about as well. So I'll just say at this point, it's best that you apply to our agency. It's called a notice of construction. And you can actually get the form on our website. It's paperwork. And you basically fill out information. In fact, how many of you are familiar with our webpage? We actually have a webpage that has a cannabis site all by itself. And so the things that you're going to be asked for when you submit a form, I'm just going to ask you your basic information. Probably like very similar to what you did with the control board. But we're going to be asking questions about, so what kind of controls you going to install? We're going to ask maybe a little bit about ventilation, where the exhaust points are, information about the quantity of materials you're going to be processing, and again, most importantly, what types of emission controls you're going to put in place. And we're going to talk again about that. Our permits are subject to SEPA, the State Environmental Policy Act, so there's an environmental checklist that goes along with that. So just keep in mind that if you've already filled that out, you can use that checklist when you submit your application to us. Of course, the whole purpose of SEPA is that, and even in our permit review process, is that you're not gonna get a permit if you're not zoned to be there. And I know the liquor board didn't do that when they were processing their applications, but as you start moving through these permitting, issues, that'll come up. So, anyway, so, that's kind of it in a nutshell. It's just, you know, you submit a form, of course there's a fee, and then there'll be, you'll ask me to submit a bunch of information about simply what you're doing, and an engineer will review it, and then when they're done, you get a permit to operate. So I'll just share with you, like I said before, it's very important, I think, that you best just simply move along and apply on your own. And I say this because we know where all the legal operators are, because you can go to the Washington the Liquor Control Board website, and it says where everybody is. So there are penalties for non-compliance, and I'll just point out, at some point, we will do a compliance blitz. We'll grab that list, and we've done this before on other types of issues, and we'll just send inspectors out, and we'll do nothing but go through everybody that's on that list that's not in our system. So, you know, it's inevitable, it's gonna happen eventually. So I just want to say that, so might as well just get it over, get it over with, get it done. So, so we're not showing up unannounced, and, you know, you would likely be in receipt of a ticket too. I mean, a citation if you're not in compliance, not only with the registration requirements, but any controls that would be required as well. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about that. That's kind of like the heavy end of what I want to talk about. I got two questions in the back. Yes.
Why wouldn't you just send a letter instead of just sending somebody unannounced?
We actually, I think right now, we have been making a concerted effort. I think it comes in the form of a postcard. Yeah. So we have been following the list, and I think I'm not.
Just imagining like some guy coming over and checking out there.
Yeah, well, that will eventually happen if you're not in the system and you're on the Liquor Control Board site is having a permit to grow or process. Yes, in the back? No.
Will the person, the inspector that comes out, they'll have identifications to prove who they're coming from and not just...
Yes, it'll be an inspector. They'll identify themselves as someone is an inspector with the agency. There's protocol with respect to how we conduct inspections. You know, doing meeting at the office, identifying themselves and saying why you're there. That'll all happen.
And the registration fee? The fee for the permit?
Yes.
How much is that, please?
I don't know if I have that number, but it's not like a couple $100. It's much more than that. No, I don't know. It's not cheap. You could end up spending at least a couple grand.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, we got all kinds of questions all of a sudden. So we got.
I'm interested in outdoor grows and whether odor might be considered a problem by your agency. And
Sure.
also, I'm curious whether lavender farms are on that excluded industries list.
What kind of farms?
Lavender.
Lavender, okay. So, the answer is, we're still trying to determine what best available control technologies for outdoor growers. So I can share with you, I think we have 3 permits that are in right now. I don't think none of those are out for outdoor grows. So, but outdoor grow certainly would be subject to our odor rules. I'm gonna go over all that in a bit. Okay, so I'm just trying to, okay, right.
Lavender farm.
How many permits have you issued thus far?
I think we have not issued any. We have 3 applications in.
So there's no one legal as far as you guys are concerned?
Right, but keep in mind, we're I'm just broadcasting that at some point. We're gonna step up. But we recognize that you guys couldn't even sell this stuff for a while. So I know we realize that you invested a lot of capital, but you couldn't sell. So I mean, I think we took all that into consideration with respect to when we're gonna be out there. I mean, in order to be able to pay your bills, you got to be able to sell a product. So I think in the back of our minds, you wouldn't hear us publicly talk about it. but, I think we're trying to understand that issue and just trying to, you know, get the message out first. I think we've done that through these postcards and stuff, and then maybe me doing this, you got IRAC, this is another venue that I think is gonna happen in October.
Yeah, we're gonna follow up, but
yeah.
we're putting out the booklet's actually coming out really soon.
Yes, absolutely. So, anyway, you asked about lavender farms. No. Lavender farms, well, they would be subject to the odor the regulations unless they're agriculture. And I don't know if they are or not.
So they would be a good model for what best control practices in existence are.
Could be, because what happens for an outdoor grower, you need a permit, so it'll be real interesting when those first ones come in to see what outdoor growers are proposing for odor controls for outdoor growers. And that would simply be evaluated, again, against dust available control technology, that criteria. Okay, so we got about four or five more hands up. Back here?
Yeah, you mentioned infraction fees. To what level are those infractions? And also, you do a proactive walkthrough with the inspector. That if you were to reach out proactively, they have them walk through to make sure that you were in compliance.
Okay, so you asking if we're gonna like do a cursory visit first? I think if anybody called us and said, would you come out and take a look, I think we would be more than willing to do that. But once we get into compliance mode, I mean, we don't show up and then you say, well, can I have a cursory inspection?
No, you'd be as I said, proactive.
Yeah.
And I guess really what the severity of fine, when we talk about you're issuing tickets, are we talking OSHA level or?
Well, I'll share with you what the scale looks like, since you asked. Penalties, well, our penalties start at 1,000, and they go up to over 17,000. So it really depends on
Per
a,
infraction?
huh?
Per infraction?
Per violation per day, yeah. Per day, yeah. But we'll talk about that. And there's actually a alert sheet that we use with respect to, you know, what type of emission was it? Was there history? Was there actions taken to prevent? What happened at the time of the violation? What's done to prevent future violations? Did you have a history? So it's kind of a series of questions. The questions are scored on a sliding scale, and then a monetary guide is associated with it. And again, there's all kinds of tools. I mean, it's, you know, okay. Jeremy, we got more questions.
So just to kind of, from a macro perspective, I know you're gonna kind of talk about this, you guys regulate 4 counties here on the west side. Now how does that extrapolate to the rest of the state? I mean, I know a lot of what we do over here kind of sets precedent for other counties. Can you kind of just?
Well, you know, we're a political entity, the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, just like the others. So, you know, we all have our own board of directors, and it's just interesting. Like I think you'll find in the Seattle area, people pay more attention to environmental issues and environmental laws than you might find in, like, you know, in Wenatchee or something like that. So the Department of Ecology would have jurisdiction over there. They have a similar type of penalty structure, but the questions may be a little different in the way they score it and the way they look at the way they look at their cases may come out differently. It's all different.
So just to kind of clarify my question, is like you said, so we know here if you're in Kittitas, King, Pierce, and what was the fourth one?
Well, Kitsap, King,
thank you.
Salvation, King.
That obviously it's under this structure. It is, so like I said, when you're talking about outdoor grows, a lot of those are going to be on the east side of the state. Are there similar clean air regulations, even though it's not by your organization, still running those jurisdictions that they're going to have to comply with?
That's very interesting because there are, like, I think Orca down in the Olympia area, I think they said they're not even dealing with cameras.
Okay. All right.
That's what they said. Okay. Okay, more questions?
So kind of 2 clarifying questions. One, it sounds like you have no interest in medical cannabis and doing any permitting associated with that. And then second clarifying question, you're saying it's pretty easy for compliance, and trust me, I'm a compliance lover. But for you to, thousands of dollars for a permit for you to verify I have adequate carbon filtration and
Well,
a controlled environmental agriculture system disproportionate to me.
Well, the permit fee is based on the actual cost to actually review the permit. I mean, permits aren't reviewed in 10 minutes. I mean, there's actually a lot of engineering and technical resource that goes into issuing a permit. And that's just the fee up front, you know, the cost of the permit itself.
No, I understand that. I'm just making a statement
Yeah.
that's a little disproportionate and just clarifying it. And then second, medical cannabis. Sounds like there's no interest or concern.
Well, there would be if there was odors. We'll talk about that. But if I understand that one, that one's not. I mean, the state of Washington's really clear about medical, right?
Here, you go tell them.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do it.
All right. The cloud is clear now.
I know, clear as mud, right?
But
Okay.
will you guys permit a medical facility if asked?
I think if someone asks for permit, I don't know why we would not. Yes, a couple more questions, and then I move on to this other couple more topics here. Odor.
We're at the end of our CEPA review, so we understand that we're about ready to clear that hurdle up in Snohomish County. Snohomish County Planning and Development Department has recently told us that we're going to have to get a permit from Puget Sound Clean Air Agency. But they don't seem to be very clear on whether I need to get your permit before they issue my building permit, or if it's, you know, if they're gonna be interrelated, or they issue the building permit and then I have to go through you guys. Are you familiar with how Snohomish County is working with this? And is Snohomish County any different than Kane, Pierce, or
You know, I don't do permits, but I know the scenario you're talking about where we often will hold on to a permit and not issue it until we get information from the city or county, wherever the business is, that they don't have any CEPA issues associated with that particular government action. So I don't know. I'm not able to answer your question on who goes first.
chicken or the egg, huh?
Yeah, if they're the lead agency, they're probably waiting on us. That would be my guess.
All right, then I need to talk to you right away.
Okay. It's usually the lead agency, the one that's going to be asking questions and hanging on to their permit and not issuing until all the CEPA issues have been resolved. Yes, in the back.
I talked to someone from the Clean Air Agency last year, and they told me that the smell of cannabis was not considered harmful at all, basically. Is that still the case? Does the agency believe there's any harm to cannabis odor?
We'll talk about odors, and the thing about odors is it's not the harm, it's the nuisance. And so we'll get into a little bit about that. So I don't know whether it's harmful. I don't find it offending.
I'm not asking you personally. I'm saying that the agency may be sort of position on that.
The agency generally never takes a position unless it's something like asbestos where it's a known carcinogen. It's listed as dangerous. But I'm not aware that statements, because we generally wouldn't, because we're not medical professionals, to say that the smell of cannabis is harmful. Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll move along to some other things here. We're going to do the glasses. Let's see. Go ahead there. Gotta read it here. Okay, so when it comes to controls, and I think you probably all know this, the control method, the control technology for cannabis that's most effective is carbon filtration. Is that pretty much everybody nod their head to that one? Yes, go with carbon filtration. Because it's simply the most effective. It works. And I've had some experience out in the field recently. It does work. Keep in mind though, if you do have carbon filtration, you'll need the law will require that you maintain at a good working order. So what does that mean? Well, it means that it needs to be properly seated. There's no, the filter itself isn't dog-eared back where it's being bypassed. I mean, there's just things like that you need to pay attention to. I suspect is one of the permit conditions If you have carbon filtration, will be a need to maintain or monitor the performance of the carbon. It could be pressure drop. You could, pressure drop like on a spray booth. Oh, we got a question in the back?
Once these get permitted and you've got it for life, are there going to be annual inspections that will come in? Since you say it needs to be well maintained, how will you know that it's well maintained?
We'll talk about that. I'm gonna try to get into that. So yes, you would be inspected, unannounced. It could be annually, could be every 2 or 3 years, it could be every 6 months. I mean, we do show up unannounced. That's our strategy. That's what EPA expects us to do.
I'm sorry, I want to go back to the inspector coming to your property because there's so much security involved in all of this. When I asked that question about how they identify themselves, there could be people out there that can find out about this information and come in to the.
Absolutely.
So are they going to have a badge? Or they, I mean, how
Yeah,
do we verify that we let them into our facility?
Okay, couple things. They'll have business cards, they'll have picture ID,
A white truck.
and they'll have a vehicle that has the agency logo on it. And I have no problem if you wanted to call the agency when someone shows up and just simply verify that so-and-so, they're here. Are these people with the clean area? That's a totally fair thing for you to do. And I totally get the security issues, absolutely. Okay, all right. So if you do have carbon filtration, you will need to maintain the filters in good working order and keep track of the performance, because we want to make sure they're working. That's one thing that inspections do. We'll come in and want to take a look at the filter system, make sure it's being maintained correctly. There's often record-keeping requirements around like the performance of the filters, like if there are pressure drop readings, it may be a daily requirement to record that pressure drop. And like with filters, as the pressure differential increases, at some point they're starting to get blanketed over or plugged up, and so they need to be replaced. So we would be expecting a maintenance schedule with respect to that. We'd be asking about that during the inspection. There's also another type of control called ESP, electrostatic precipitator, or simply an ion generator. Those are usually higher capital costs up front. Basically what happens is you have a particle, and particles are carriers of odor, and what happens is when those go through an electrostatic or a charged field, they become charged positively, and then there's metal plates, grounding plates within a box. It's like a big box, and then those negative attracts positive, so that particle will adhere to the grounding plate. Usually there's like shakers that drop it into like a catch box down below. So the benefit of that is it might be a higher cost up front, but it is pretty inexpensive to operate because it does run on low amps. So there's basically two types of technologies that are out there for grows. Keep in mind too, masking agents, like what's a masking agent? Those are unlawful. You can't try to mask the odor with another type of chemical. That's illegal in the state of Washington. That's illegal at least in our jurisdiction. I think it's illegal in the state of Washington as well. So let's talk about. So in other words, you can't be putting perfume or something like that, goofy like that, in the air, trying to hide the smell. Who's going to do that, right? Well, people do that. So let's talk about odors. This will be fun. Odors. My advice to you is to be a good neighbor, right? Be responsive if someone calls you or calls upon you to ask questions about what they think they're smelling. Because the last thing you want is for them you want them to call you. The last thing you want is for them to be calling me, right? I mean, it just makes so much sense, right? And the thing is, once somebody gets pissed about what they're smelling, that my experience comes with compost. It doesn't matter. Once they become upset about the odor, there's nothing they're going to do to change their minds. I mean, they might smell a whiff of it, and they will still call us. They will be gunning for you. I don't know what it is, but when it comes to odor, if you think about odor, it's like it stinks, and your body's telling you something's wrong when you're smelling something offensive, right? It gets back to that idea, like you're smelling rotten meat, you're not going to eat it. Your body mind's saying. There's something rancid about that. And I don't know if it just works on people's minds, but there's just something about, I'm offended by that smell, and it must be unhealthy. And it doesn't matter what you tell them, and keep in mind, that's not what we're out there doing. We're out there looking at the nuisances. So let's talk about odors a little bit more. So let's talk about what field procedures are. Odor is an air pollutant. So we have rules about
But noise pollution.
Yeah, exactly.
So okay,
What do we call it?
we have regulations on odor. So what is an odor violation?
You got noise?
Noise violation.
Yeah.
Would it be anybody complaining?
Yeah.
Period?
Yep. Someone complains, right? And they say I'm being impacted at my house. I can't be outside in my garden because the smell makes my eyes water or makes me cough. Or I can't, excuse me, I go to hang my laundry and, it ends up, I can't do it because it's going to smell. It's going to smell like whatever the odor is. It's a quality of life thing. It's those types of issues. So when they call, we'll respond. And so there's three things that we have to show when it comes to odors. First off, we have to be able to detect independently in the field, the inspectors, that the odor that's being detected is distinct, definite, and unpleasant. So what does that mean? That sounds rather subjective, doesn't it? What I often ask myself when I'm in the field and I'm smelling something, I ask myself often, would I want to live here or work here? Right? Because I can determine that it has unpleasant characteristics. I'm not the one being bothered. So the other thing that we need is the person that filed the complaint, the person that, if you're on their property, they need to step up and fill out a formal complaint form. They need to say what it is about the odor that's unreasonably interfering with their enjoyment of life. In fact, I can actually read the statute to you. It says it's unlawful for any person to cause or allow the emission of any air contaminant. Odor, by definition, is an air contaminant that's in sufficient quantity. We'll talk about that. That's of such characteristics and duration that is likely to be injurious to human health. We don't focus on that. Or property, or which, and here's the key word, which unreasonably interferes with the enjoyment of life and property. So it gets back to that concept of what would a person say? What would a reasonable person say with respect to being impacted by somebody else at their, and I want to point out, at their place of home or where they work, not driving through an intersection on their way to work. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the unreasonableness of I can't be at home or I can't be at work. Employer may say I have to send my employees home, or I couldn't entertain people in my backyard last night because it was smelling. So the odor is trespassed. Yes, question.
Quick comment. When we purchased our property, which is up in agricultural, we had to sign a document that said we acknowledge that there would be odors and sounds and things related to agricultural, livestock. There was a whole disclosure for
Right.
us signing the property. So I assume that everybody that buys property has to sign something like that. So how does a signed document stating that we acknowledge that we're in farmland and we're going to smell stuff and we're going to hear stuff, how does that counterbalance what your agency is?
Well, agricultural odors, provided that the farmer or the grower, and remember, egg is very, very, very specifically defined in the state of Washington. And right now, we don't understand it to mean apply to cannabis. So, but there are egg exemptions for farmers, but it's tight because they have to show they didn't sell any of their property. You start selling off some of your property, keep some of the farm, then the exemption goes away. The legislature was pretty clear that they did not want farmers to be unduly impacted by growth, by people moving into farming areas, in interfering with the business of growing food. So I'll just share with you also, just because some community or some when you buy something, you sign some you sign paperwork, that really doesn't mean anything under the Clean Air Act. It doesn't recognize it. There's no clause in it that says you have an out. It's how it is. I mean, it's in the state of Washington, they hold really high regards to people's right to breathe clean air. Yeah, question to that.
Just a confirmation. So basically you're saying under odor control it's a nuisance, but it sounds like it's subjective to each individual person. So now we gotta pay for a permit that's a subjective odor offense that we don't really need. When you said earlier, because cannabis is not, the odor is A, subjective, and B, non-toxic, non-harmful. So we're making us buy permits that we don't really need, it sounds like.
Well,
You already said that it's non-toxic.
no, I think the strategy would be that you apply for a permit because you're going to be explaining the whole thing about filtration and stuff. You got to size it for the size of the room that you're pulling from, airflow. All that needs to be looked at. So we want to make sure, as part of that review, that your filter system is sized correctly for the area for the cubic feet you're trying to move.
But as a grower, I'm filtering my air for my purposes, not for my neighbors, because they don't like the smell. So now you're saying I need to file for this permit that you guys don't recognize as this odor is not harmful. It's just bothering my neighbors, so that's the whole reason I need this permit.
I think I can address that.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
So just on that, whoever was, so we have a grow, and actually it's funny that this came up. Our filters ran out probably about 12 months ago, and I didn't really think about it. And sure enough, about 45 days or 48 hours ago, our neighbor came by and complained. Now the reality for me is I'm 1 second away from a phone call to these guys, so it's in my best interest to make sure my neighbor isn't upset. And that's really what their goal is. The issue that right to peace, that really if you are living in a certain jurisdiction, you have the right to piece of property. You have a cannabis grow that is literally right next door to you. It is their responsibility to regulate that building. And if that aroma is exiting outside the building, you are not doing your due diligence as a professional cannabis grower. So I understand the concept of that, but the reality is,
It sounded
yeah.
confusing, I guess.
No, does that make sense? At least.
That makes more sense.
Okay. Then we're running short on time.
Okay.
Well, one other thing, taking a page out of John Davis' book, sometimes it's nice to go make friends with your neighbors too, and tell them, hey, I'm going to be going over here, I'm going to be growing, and I like to make friends, I'm going to make you a cup of coffee, and then if there's a problem, maybe you can call me first and not the EPA.
That's the smartest strategy in the world. Absolutely. Make your neighbors happy.
Yeah, go out and proactively meet your neighbors, tell them what you're doing.
There you go.
Make friends immediately.
Another question, then we'll wrap up here with
To
short.
be devil's advocate, what if I said, here, I submitted my plan, I want a permit, my plan is, screw everybody, I love the smell of marijuana. Is there a problem with that? Do I actually have to deal with the smell legally? Do I have to care about whether my neighbors complain? Where's the law that says I have to stop my marijuana?
Okay, there was one more point about the odor investigation. The inspector then is able to trace the odor back to the source. So, they need to detect that the odor is unpleasant, right?
So pleasant.
And, what's that again?
You said it's so pleasant though.
We're talking to a biased jury.
It's pleasant to us, yes.
The complaint fills out a form. Yeah, the complaint fills out a form, and then we have the burden to show where it came from. So what happens is, to answer your question, so what happens if I don't care, or you want to play devil's advocate? Well, what happens is you get a ticket. And then you get,
Because it qualifies as those three things, as obnoxious and.
because we met the burden of the odor standard with respect to, it's unlawful for any person to unreasonably interfere with the enjoyment of life or property to another.
So as long as the agency determines that one of the neighbors has a qualified, those three things qualify as their word, then that's a ticketable offense.
That's the three things that we need. It's on our website. That's the three things that we need in order to conclude there's a violation violation of our odor
So could
standard.
I find an inspector that really likes the smell of weed?
Probably. I have no problem with it, but I'm not the problem. The issue you have to remember is I'm not the judge. I can certainly say that I can understand the unpleasant characteristics, but I'm not the one being bothered. So me and myself, by myself, I don't have, it's not, I need someone else to say that they're being bothered, and that's where the complaint comes in.
Quick question, is there a calculation on the website that you can figure out what you need based on your cubic feet?
Yeah, how many air exchanges a minute do you want essentially?
You know, it's interesting because I've seen some growers where they're circulating inside with a carbon filter to keep the concentration down, then ultimately they have another filter that's going outside. So
What if you don't have anything going outside?
if you have nothing going outside,
I have a 15,000 square foot facility that does not exchange air to the
then
exterior.
I think when you apply, then you should say that. And then,
So there's no specific calculation that says you need this big of a filter for this many cubic feet?
you know, our permit engineers could probably answer that question better than I could.
The end result, it can't stink. The end result has to be,
Yeah.
it cannot smell.
Right.
So however many it takes.
Whether you have
Right,
pepper
but
size
who
or
wants to
size.
buy a huge filter that's more than what they need?
Question here, how we doing, Jeremy? I'm running out of time.
Yeah, we gotta kill it.
Okay, one more question.
No more questions.
Well, I live in a town with a paper mill that freaks up the entire place, is what I consider a very unpleasant smell. Everyone's seen it. So how would that affect if there was an industrial area right here, there was someone growing marijuana, and someone complained about the smell of marijuana, and it's very obvious to everyone at Reese, like, broad days everywhere, so they smell marijuana on the counter, getting maybe inside of the other room.
Great question. The agency has the burden to show that the odor that someone's experiencing is coming from your facility, and if it's coming from a paper mill, then their focus changes to the paper mill.
They complain about the marijuana amongst it smelling like rotten eggs in their town.
Yeah,
I think his point is that
depends what they're complaining about.
this seems a little hypocritical because I'm in an industrial area. I have Rabenko Recycling right by me. I have France Bakery. You know, very strong smells that run rampant through
Mhm.
DeSoto. But someone cares about my cannabis smell making it 5 feet away. And it's very much so a double standard. And I think you're very aware that there is a marginalization of our industry coming online. And people are going to have a huge problem with it. But then, like, Rabenko, this massive lobbying conglomerate, can just smell disgusting and reek up a whole
You can
district.
smell that 3
They're not
blocks
growing
away.
a federally illegal product, guys, like, seriously. He's
Yeah.
just telling you he's representing the EPA,
Right.
they will shut
Okay.
this down.
Right.
Like, it's as simple as that, you need to follow standards set by national organizations, you're not gonna get around it. That's all you guys keep doing,
I don't
you're circling around the issue.
I don't think
The
anyone-
issue is that the EPA will shut you down.
I don't think anyone's intention is.
Everybody give Rick a big hand. Okay, perfect.
I'll just tell you, I'll come back later if you want, at some point down the road, as we get more experience with this, and we can have another discussion. But these are great questions, you guys, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I am sorry to cut Rick off, but I actually do want to second what the gentleman said, you know, just so I can stand in front of everybody. Everybody understands that what we're dealing with is a federally illegal substance, and even though Banco can actually smell up a single neighborhood, the reality for us is that it is upon us to be responsible. We are the bastions of goodwill, we are the first ones here, and we have to set an example. And the last thing we want is upset neighbors. The reality being is that I love the smell of cannabis, a lot of people love the smell of cannabis, but some people don't. And the reality being is that this is the system that we live in. If my neighbor wants to get, he's a lumber manufacturer. I smell solvents coming from his place all the time, but the reality being is that I still have to go next door, shake his hand, bring him a fruit basket, apologize that my place reeked of cannabis, and get a better scrubber. That goes on me. So that's the only piece of professional advice I would give. Be a good neighbor, take care of your aroma, understand that even though it is a beautiful thing that we live in Washington State and we can grow cannabis openly, federally you can't really do it a lot of places, and we still need to set that example by being good political bastions. I'm sorry we're running a little late. I'm going to sum up real quick. The Washington Cannabis Commission came together, I believe it was last Thursday. Can anybody correct me on that?
Yes.
So that was an amazing thing. I've been an activist for 15 years. I've been politically active heavily in the cannabis industry for about 7. And I saw how many organizations were there? 10 almost? About 10. First time ever in the cannabis industry, you had 502 medical producers, processors, retailers, almost from the entire state, come together to really convene and talk about this next political session for the state of Washington. Long and short of it is, infighting amongst the industry, amongst warring factions, has been the single biggest detriment to the cannabis industry getting effective legislation. Our goal by calling the summit was NCIA, ASA, MJBA, MBA, CCSE, ACLU, COSM, WMA. I mean, so all the leaders of all these organizations. Yes. So the list goes on. If you go to the CCSE website, you'll see the picture. It was an amazing thing, and really what came out of that is the unification of the cannabis industry statewide. The one thing I firmly believe, the one thing I fought for, the reason I stand up here and devote my time for free to do this year after year, is because this actually works. What happened last week was one of the most amazing things I've seen, hands down, in this industry. And if those people can get together, address the problems, there's nothing that we cannot get as an industry if we all work together. So that was an absolutely amazing thing. And I'm stoked because it's going to continue to keep happening, and I will keep everybody abreast of what's going on. That's about it from my end. I want to turn the mic over to our Executive Director, John Davis, for all the pertinent things he has to tell us.
Hello. So it's interesting, it's great. I was a part of the Iraq statewide commission, and to work with all the various regulated bodies on this brand new industry, and to find out things like there is no legal cannabis in Washington State. I mean, no one has fulfilled all the permitting requirements. Not the pros of the pros. No one has done it yet, right? And you also step up to these things where probably the best way, and I'm sure Alex would argue this one with me, to maintain your odor is to create a negative pressure environment. And a negative pressure environment means that you have a carbon scrubber and you're exhausting air. And you do that, and the air authority is going to say, awesome. But now you're going to go into the building authority, and your building authority is going to say, well, what the hell is that? Well, we're controlling our odor. Oh, are you aware that it is outside energy code to exhaust conditioned air, right? Yeah. So this is why we come together, really, is because we need each other. Because each person here in this room is run against one of these problems, and it's working together. Alex got the first change in use grow permit in Washington State.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was able to help him do it because I got the first bullshit in Washington State, in that I just played a little loose with use rules. But the city was down, but we learned enough that we could take those next steps. And that's why we're here. And we're up against actually a lot. I mean, really, the more I look at this thing, the more dynamic it gets. This is such an incredible, I mean, one day someone's going to write a book about this, because it's just it's too strange for fiction. But it is ongoing, and we are the professionals, and we are here to understand it and to help each other comply and to keep each other out of trouble. Hey, valuable information. If you haven't got a permit from Puget Sound Clean Air and you're within those 4 counties, go down there and be proactive. They're going to give you a permit. They might run some numbers and say you throw another carbon filter in it, but it's a hell of a lot better than $17,000 a day
Per infraction.
for infraction, right? And the little going out and giving your neighbors coffee. Not a bad idea to say, hey, look, I'm here and I do cannabis. I don't have horns. You can check. But so let's get down to the nitty gritty of what's going on. Eric Holder resigned this morning.
Woo!
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right. So now we've got Eric Holder, who's the United States Attorney General, and more concerning, Jenny Durkin, who is the U.S. Attorney in the Western District of Washington. Both of them resigned, both of them getting replaced. Who is going to replace them, and how is things going to change? And briefly, I'll say that I can't imagine that Obama is going to be the one appointing, although all these things are political, but I cannot imagine that Obama is going to put anyone in place in the AG spot that is going to care a lot about campus. I think that they will be asked to go along with the Ogden and Cole memoranda, and of course the Ogden and Cole memoranda, leave it to the U.S. Attorney. Who is our U.S. Attorney? We're trying to be effective in getting a replacement for Durkin, but who, right? I saw Pete Holmes' name floated the other day. Great choice. I would love to see that, but politically, is that a possibility? I don't think so. So what we're ending up doing, I mean, the appointment's going to be made by Cantwell and Murray, our senators. I think that the most that we can hope for right now is to just get the word out to them that we want someone in place in the Western District that is going to share Jenny's tolerance and leave it up to the localities. However, the localities have got their own problems, and I've been working with the state agencies and with the City of Seattle in particular. And the City of Seattle is going through the process right now of setting up a system so they can shut people down specifically. Many of you know this. Many of you have had the conversation with the City of Seattle. That is their intent. Who are they going to shut down, and what criteria? I met with David Mendoza, who is the Seattle's pot person currently. And, he was talking about the bad medical players. And I threw down, I happen to have it right there, the stranger, and said, hey, look at the back of this. And you realize recreational delivery, you know by law that's an oxymoron. Maybe you want to start targeting these people. However, what the City of Seattle seems like they are doing is they are putting together a licensing criteria. That's where it seems to be going, that they are going to require a city license. And they're going to have these things spelled out, 502 medical, whatever, you're going to have a city license. And the licensing requirements are going to be coming up, and mostly they're going to be done behind closed doors. However, we got an in. And if we're going to be talking in the political committee right after this, and these are going to be kind of the sensibilities. What do we need from legislation? What do we need from licensing? What is reasonable regulation? What do you need for your business? And these are the type of things that we're going to be discussing. I think with licensing, we'll discuss this afterwards, but yeah, I'll get into the details later. Also in the city, Pete Holmes, again, comes up. I like Pete, I really do. He dismissed all the tickets for... Yeah. if you're not smoking marijuana and issued a ticket, hey, and you paid the fine, they're sending you your money back. Seriously. Which is good. I mean, I really like the intent. However, it comes back down to the feds. When are the feds going to start caring about this? The feds were clear when this thing started out, hey, as long as you guys are going about this reasonably, we're not going to care so much. However, the City of Seattle is struggling to figure out how they can even close the completely outrageously illegal delivery services. And Winter Life, anyone here from Winter Life? I wonder, so now they're showing up in people's door, and they got a little piece of paper, and the little piece of paper you're supposed to sign says, I believe the cannabis helps me medically. Yeah, they're saying, yeah, we're medical. And, and to some extent, the city's going, does that work? It's like, come on, you know what? But, it is concerning that all this stuff is in flux, and at some point, the federal government will step in, and I'll remember replaced by the new chief of police, right in that window, raised, you know, and that concerns me. We're gonna have a window here with U.S. Attorney, and I know the Deputy U.S. Attorney, Vince Lombardi, grandson of the Vince Lombardi from football, he doesn't like us.
It's because we have this trophy.
Oh.
Yeah, it's true. We got his dad's trophy, or his granddad's trophy, so. You know, and what's gonna happen in that, you know, my advice to you guys is, wise attorney once said to me, only break one law at a time. Make sure you're watching your ship. Make sure you're complying with as many of the laws as you can. The shutdowns are going on right now, and I'm dealing with 5 are attempted shutdowns. They're all revenue. Now, whether they be DOR, whether it be L&I, whether it be another of those tax agencies, if you're not paying a tax, and you haven't been paying a tax, it's just like with Puget Sound Clean Air. Admit you have a problem, go to them, get yourself someone on your side that's knowledgeable, and say, hey, look, back in the day, lawyers gave weird advice. So I'm sorry, mea culpa, I didn't charge taxes, my lawyer told me not to. How do we get out of it? They're gonna be a hell of a lot more receptive to that than if they come to you. If you're not paying payroll taxes, you're paying everyone in cash, understandable given the banking situation, but still, you need to be paying the taxes, and someone's gonna realize, they're going through, just like the list, not only are they going through the list of people, just like Puget Sound Clean Air, that are on the 502, they're looking at advertising, right? And if you're advertising, they're coming and they're doing it right now. They'll show up and say, hey, look, we haven't got any revenue from you. Where's our revenue? It's better that you admit you have a problem now. And look, here, we're less of an organization and more of a support group, just like Northwest Patient Resource Center. And we're here to help. So, I mean, admitting you have a problem is the first step in getting out of it. Once you've got those things, you can get a letter from the DOR that says, hey, we're cool. And it's happened more than once. But man, when they show up, they're aggressive. They're there to shut you down. And we have to come in afterwards and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. So, again, if you're in that situation, don't go to someone, start the process of getting help, get out of it, because eventually it's going to catch up to you. And also, if there's anything that goes on in that gap, in the U.S. Attorney gap, you want to make sure that your ship is as clean as humanly possible, whether you're medical, 502, whatever. If you're 502, it's still federally illegal. Sean?
I just want to insert that the Department of Revenue actually has an amnesty program in place. And I went through it, it was really easy, no fees, all I had to do was show 2 years of back revenue, and it's 0.0471%, so it's minuscule. I mean, just do it.
Does that also work for the sales tax, or they probably not, don't give you any
Yeah,
sales
it would work
tax?
for sales tax. I'm only wholesale, so I
Oh,
only
and
have,
you're fine.
yeah, but it would work for sales tax.
Amnesty?
Yeah, it's called the amnesty program.
Yeah, so, and you can get out of it for, pennies on the dollar. Really, though, it's a really good idea to be, well, no, it's a really good, for those of us who have always charged sales tax since day one, remember, if you have to come out the amnesty program, who's paying that money? You are. If you're smart enough to be charging taxes, who is paying for it? Your customers always will. So, but no matter how it is, get out of it. Grayson?
Does L&I have an amnesty program?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes, but they're a much more, well, they don't have a formalized amnesty program.
Right.
But if you go in there and say, hey, mea culpa, bad advice, right, how do we get out of it? Just, you want to go in there with coffee, hey guys, how's it going? I'm trying to sell marijuana legally here. So anyways, I'll move on. Just if you have a problem, make sure that you're taking steps to get out, because it will catch up with you. My opinion, but I think I widely shared. If we don't have regulation on medical, this session is going to go away. and it's probably gonna go away with a bang. And so we need to have something in there. So political is going to meet directly after this meeting. Also, NCIA, I'm, full disclosure, I'm vice chair of the National Cannabis Industry Association. But that is the industry, or that is the organization that's gonna be working on the other things you care about, especially 502 retailers, man. Talk to Todd. I think he summed it up quite nicely this morning. But, banking and taxes, huge issue. We can help you on the banking, that's solvable. Taxes for a 502 retailer, man, you wanna have a strategy in place. Also, you wanna be working, quick plug for the NCIA, you wanna be working with them too, because they are gonna change the things federally. And remember, if you have been paying 280E compliance for a while, hey, if we can get legislation in that makes, that turns it back 5 years retroactively, I'm taking a trip.
My money back. My money back.
Right? You know, because we pay, man, our taxes suck. Okay, also, quick plug for things going on in the future. We are starting to put together in 2016 in New York, be there, be square. It's going to be fun. The UN is going to meet regarding the Single Convention Treaty. So yeah, we're 2016 is the next time that we can take to actually affect the international law that leads to a lot of this gray area. You know, the federal government cannot say, hey, yeah, Washington, Colorado, it's legal. They're bound by treaty. That's one of the reasons why there's it's such muddy area, and we're starting to have those conversations now. If you'd like to be involved, there's a few organizations that on the international level we're trying to get together. Also significant things that came up recently, Illinois. The application deadline for Illinois was the 22nd. And so if you're anyone else playing in Illinois, no, I got 7 applications myself, but no, interesting state, interesting place to play, and that's happened. And I'll turn it back over to Jeremy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. I don't have much more, so we'll wrap up real quick. I do apologize for being a little tardy this week. Actually, just going to jump right into announcements. The CCSE is having a mixer tomorrow in Spokane, so if anybody's going to be on the east side, come join us. I'll be there. Most of the board's going to be there. We're taking a road trip tomorrow. Should be a lot of fun. Croptoberfest is coming up in Yakima, October 25th. CCSE is also going to be involved with them. COSM is kind of a large politically functional counterpart out on the east side in some part of the state. So we're working with coalitioning with them to promote and get all this stuff out. Going back to legislation, it's actually the biggest thing. The reason that the CCSE exists amidst all the other organizations, that this organization has been politically functional from the beginning. It's written and drafted 3 different pieces of legislation successfully, gotten them passed, lobbied to get them passed. And actually, I want to see, is John Jensen here? John Jensen. All right, so everybody look at that gentleman. He's a brilliant man. The understanding of what I'm about to say, that lobbying is how all this gets done. Laws do not get passed without moxie, and in regular representation, moxie is resources, and that's money. The reality for us is that we all have businesses, and in order to protect those businesses, we all need to get together to lobby to protect our interests. Lobbying is not free. We have a lobbyist that we pay. We need to get another lobbyist. So once again, bringing up John, what John has done, which is absolutely amazing, that almost every meeting on top of his dues, he donates to CCSE extra funds for lobbying. So does my organization, so do a lot of other organizations. So I want to say once again, John is a model example for how he does his business, that every month he's trying to get more funds into lobbying to protect his interests as a business owner, and I encourage every single one of you to do it. To second what John said, if you are in the medical industry right now, there's a lot of movement to regulate, not to omit it, but to actually regulate it, get it codified, and have it structured and run. The reality for us is that that's a huge thing to be done. We want our interests represented there. How that works, once again, is lobbying.